Alright, hello everybody, we are back, and I am Chris Barkle, and welcome back to another episode of Chris Barkle's Album Club, where we do two albums, randomly picked, from a list of random anonymous submissions that we've all done, and we get often very, very bizarre matchups, which today's episode is going to be a very bizarre matchup. So today with me, I have those who don't know the matchup yet, Ben.
Red, red wine, you make me feel so fine. You keep me rocking all of the time. Red, red wine, you make me feel so grand. Feel like $1 million when you're in my hand.
Matthew.
Red, red wine, you make me feel so sad. Anytime you see Yoko, it make me feel bad. Red, red wine, you make me feel so fine. Monkey pack him, lizard on the sweet tip line.
And Fan.
Red, red wine, you give me a whole heap of zing. Whole heap of zing, you make me do my own thing. Red, red wine, you know how feel love. You kind of love it like a blessing from above.
Alright. Well, that was only very interesting. Alright, you already hear what today's albums are?
Yes.
Sure.
Alright, well, I'm going to be doing something I don't usually do. I am going to be enlisting the help of a certain Fan2112, or good friend and panelist, Fan, who I literally just introduced a minute ago, so I don't need to introduce him again. I'm going to need your help figuring out how to pronounce one of these, Fan. So, the first album I'm going to send to Fan, and he will read its name out loud, and then hopefully after hearing him say it, I can do it. So, Fan, what is the first album?
Yes, so the first album is Tamahime Sama by Jun Togawa.
Alright, hopefully I will be able to repeat that back, accurately, but I'm not 100% sure. But thank you, Fan, at least. May have to have your help a little bit more. The other album is Paramore's This Is Why, which we did Paramore on the Album Club before,
Yes!
but it's been long enough that they're back in the running, so. We're going for first impressions, and we are going to you, Ben. What are your thoughts on this pairing?
I don't think this is... Well, while I do occasionally listen to Japanese albums, I don't think this is one I'm familiar with. This seems to be a new wave album, which I do like the new wave music. That's an awkward way of putting it. Oops. I do like new wave, and it says this avant-garde new wave, which sounds good, but I'm not familiar with this artist. They do seem to be Japanese. She seems to be Japanese, sounds like. But I don't know anything about her. This is not Japanese. If I have heard this music, I didn't know who it was. And I know I have not listened to this album as a whole. I have heard This Is Why, which is Paramore's most recent album, which provides the reasons why we don't leave the house. Yes, I'm familiar with and have heard at least a couple times Paramore's This Is Why, though I've heard Aftermath a lot more. We've already done that on the album. But This Is Why is an album I'm familiar with fairly well.
Matthew.
I have not heard of Tamahime Sama. I believe that's how you say it. I've not heard of that one yet, but I will listen to it. As for This Is Why, by Paramore, I am well acquainted with this album. I even went to their concert when they were at DC. So that's all I have to say.
Alright. Fan?
So, shockingly, I am familiar with Tamahime Sama. It's a very interesting record. Really cool album, and of course, This Is Why. One of the best albums of the last few years. great tunes on it. This is why it's my favorite Paramore tune. So I'm excited.
As for me, I believe I've heard of this Japanese album before. Maybe from hearing Fan talk about it, I'm not sure. But I do believe I've heard of it before, but I don't really know much about it. As I said, I probably have heard Fan talk about it. That's more than likely probably where I've recognized the name. Although I can't say for 100% sure. As for Paramore's This Is Why, yeah, I heard that back around the time it first came out. Matthew wanted me to listen to it, so I did listen to it. The only song I really remember from it was Crave, though. That was a pretty good one. I like that one, but that's only one I really remember right off the top of my head. So, but still, I do remember it being solid, albeit not as good as some of the other Paramore albums I listened to. So, that Matthew wanted me to listen to. So, yeah, I think all of us have listened to This Is Why, I think now. So, that's sort of a known factor. Tama. Let's see, Tama. How was it again, Fan?
Tamahime Sama.
Thank you. Tamahime Sama, yeah, is, I think, kind of an unknown. It's the unknown variable. This is kind of like when we did Michael Jackson versus Sleater-Kinney, where, like, Michael Jackson was very much the known factor for us, and Sleater-Kinney wasn't. This is kind of like that. Paramore's the known factor for us, and then Tamahime Sama is kind of like the unknown. So it should be very interesting to see what our thoughts are on it, even if I doubt most of us, if any of us, would vote for it over Paramore. I can't speak for Fan, but I mean, there's an off chance that me, Matthew, and Ben listen to this album and like think it's like the greatest thing we've ever heard. It's unlikely, but it's possible. I always try to keep an open mind. So we'll see. We'll see. This is why I don't leave the house, because I got these albums to listen to. I mean, how can you broaden your horizons if you don't just, I gotta listen to them. And this weird, obscure stuff, this is why I don't leave the house, because I have to listen. So, yeah. That's basically it. Anyone have anything else to say?
This
Let's
is
go.
why I don't leave the house. You say the coast is clear.
Alright, we're going to go listen to these albums now, and we'll be right back to give our thoughts on them. Alright, we are back, and we're here to give our thoughts on the album. First album was, let's see if I can remember how to pronounce this name. If correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Tamahime Sama, maybe? By Jun Togawa. I'm not great with Japanese names. Was that right, Fan?
Very close. Tamahime.
Tamahime. Yeah, I knew that was the part I was getting wrong. Alright, well, it's Tamahime Sama by Jun Togawa. And we'll start with you, Ben. What are your thoughts on this album?
I thought that this album was great. I really enjoyed it. I do not understand the lyrics, even though I do sometimes listen to Japanese music. I hadn't heard of this one. So I can't really speak to the lyrical content, even though I did look up the lyrics for song 2 at one point, Tennen Pushiganga. So the songs that I like the best on this album, well, song number 2, Tennen Pushiganga, I'm from butchering that, which is singing and dancing resignation. I really like the use of the background vocals on it and the percussion on that one in particular. Then the song following it, Kon Chugun, stands for translates to an army of bugs. I also really like that one. And then I liked Mori, number 7, Mori no Hibeto, People of the Forest, and number 8, especially number 8, Odo When I Can't Dance. I thought that all 4 of those tracks were especially good, especially enjoyable. But I thought every track on this was good. This was a really solid, surprising album. I liked the opening track, Doto no Wenai the least, actually, which is kind of unusual, but it was still a good track. And when this gets into its like more clearly new wave stuff, it goes really hard. But yeah, I do somewhat struggle to talk about it because I can't understand the lyrics, and I don't know. I do think it's swapping between this kind of more intense new wave stuff and this kind of almost lullaby like um instrumentals on some of the tracks I didn't mention. I think worked really well and made it altogether a very pleasant listening experience.
Matthew.
I would also agree that this album is really good to even great. I don't think there's a track in this Swift 9 track album that drags or pulls the album down. My personal favorite is the 9 track Mushi no Oni, uh, Ona, which is palpitating woman. Um, but like a lot of the tracks that Ben that's mentioned were also very very good to great. And this was like one of the best surprises that we've gotten in the album club in terms of the massive um, quality of this album. So uh, I can't really speak to any of the lyrics because it was spoken in Japanese, and I don't know that much Japanese outside of watching a couple of manga, a couple of animes. But this is like a really great album.
All right, fan.
So I think this is an amazing album. I mean, it takes traditional Japanese folk music, new wave, very electronic, very kind of Kraftwerk style, that kind of darker, more little rigid kind of synth work. Classical music. Album goes through lots of key changes very seamlessly. It's very great. This is, I mean, definitely a synth first album, even with certain songs that the synth is very light on. Like the second track, Tienin Pushiganga, which is the very most traditional Japanese folk type song. Still has some synth in there, but I would still say it's a very synth first kind of record. And we're talking a lot about lyrics and not being able to understand them, which is certainly a hurdle with this music. But one thing I do tend to like about folk music is, since you're not really able to fully understand or at all understand the lyrics, the vocals just become entirely a melody on top of the music, making the voice really become an instrument fully, as opposed to when you listen to music in your own language. You know, you're kind of going back and forth between the words and the melody. This one, you get to fully concentrate on just the singing and just the melodies on top and the harshness and the softness and all that. Um, you can definitely tell that um, this is a concept album. I mean, not like as much a story, but going through, I believe, the life of a dragonfly and talking metaphors with, you know, menstruation, womanhood, things like that. With there's this one thing I sent says it's Jun touches on subjects such as menstruation, romance, and womanhood with imagery based around pupation and insects. Um, and you can tell because of the inflections she's making with her voice. Sometimes she gets really harsh, sometimes she doesn't. Um, this album pulls you through lots of many different moods, track by track, which I think is great. Um, the last song I feel like is a bit odd because obviously it is a direct variation on Pachelbel's Canon in D, which I feel like is kind of a song that we have become overexposed to in the last 20 years. At least I know I have. You know, there's a meme songs written about it and stuff, um, and that obviously is not something that you would think would be as big of an issue in 1984 or 85 when this album came out. but it is something to think about nowadays. There is actually, this holds no bearing towards my weight of the actual album because it's on a live album, but she actually did a punk version of that song in 2006 or something live. There's some live recording I found, and that's really cool. I wish that was the one on here because that was a lot cooler than the normal one, the punk version. So I just thought it was worth picking up because it is cool. Um, but overall, I think this is a really, truly great album. Very fun, very unique.
Alright, well, as for me, I did enjoy this album. I will say I think it's unfortunate that I can't speak Japanese or understand Japanese because it does seem like there may be awesome. I mean, certainly it seems like there are awesome, interesting things going on lyrically here. But my ability to really, I mean, I've kind of fan linked this to the site. It did have translations for the lyrics of some of the songs. It also did have these song titles translated. So we could kind of gather kind of some stuff there from that, but it's still, I mean, it's not, I'm sure, really a good substitute for, the real thing, actually being able to, actually understand the songs. But you can at least kind of grasp an inkling that there is something interesting going on lyrically. It's not, it's not just some sort of cliche romance songs or whatever. It has this kind of weird concept, which I guess I shouldn't go into too much because Fan already and Ben also discussed it some. But I do feel like that is worth noting is a big point in the album's favor, that it doesn't have, I guess, cliche. At least not here in America. It's not cliche. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with Japanese music, but the lyrical themes do seem to be original. So I do think that is a point of the album's favor, even if we don't quite have the full picture. I do think that is when we're talking about the album's quality, that is worth noting. As for the music, though, that's also something that I can speak to a bit better. I liked it. I thought it was quite good. You had, as fans said, Japanese folk stuff, just kind of stuff you'd expect to hear on a Japanese album. That's the kind of music that's kind of been unfortunately, a bit stereotyped as Japanese music in the West here. Although obviously anime music has become popular in the last few years and has kind of combated that here more recently. But it's a good sound, and I do like that. And then the new wave stuff, synth, kind of a weird, I liked all that. Those elements, I think, did go together quite well. Of course, they went together a bit more naturally here, even if I think some random British guy had tried to do a Japanese folk new wave album. I guess this is an actual Japanese person. Well, sorry, I got a bit sidetracked there, but specific tracks I did like, though, kind of similar to Ben and what Matthew said. I don't think those too much different, but track 2, that's Singing and Dancing, Resignation. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Japanese name of that, although I do at least have it written out in all alphabet here, but still, that's the translated name. Track 3, and All Me Bugs, that I think was the best song of the album. I really like the kind of synth horns or whatever it is in the background. It's like, yeah, that's nice. I like that. That's good. It's my favorite track of the album. Track 3, Army of Bugs. I also like track 7, People in the Forest. That was good. And track 9, that's Pupating Woman. That one was also good, I thought. As the ending track, I think Matthew, if I remember right, said that he thought that one was good as well. So, yeah, nah, but even the other songs I didn't think were bad. I will admit it does start off a little slow. Ben said that he didn't kill Metro Track 1. It's a little slow. It's kind of just an intro, I feel like. Lyrically, I don't know. I mean, maybe not, but musically it feels kind of like just a bit of a warm up, and it feels like the album kind of kicks off on track 2 and 3, and then kind of continues to go throughout its different sort of changes in mood and style throughout that. So it's basically it for my thoughts. We could probably talk about this a bit more if we spoke Japanese and were able to understand the lyrics and then articulate those thoughts back in English, because obviously we do the album club in English, which is what we're doing right now, obviously. But no, I did like this album. This is the first time we've actually done a foreign language album on the album club. I know Santiago, back when he was here, had inquired about the possibility of doing foreign language albums at some point. I just told him, I said, we might get to that. It's kind of a question mark. Kind of also depends on the album. If we listen to an album of, something like, I don't know, something that's just kind of like a single songwriter style without any super strange, musicianship in something like French, I don't think it would be probably that interesting. But, except Ben does actually understand some French, so it might be interesting for him, but, wouldn't be very interesting for me. But this I did find interesting, even without being able to understand any of the lyrics. I only read the song titles, and some of the translated lyrics after listening to this album, try to get a full picture here before talking about it, and I think it was, even without any of the context provided, it was still a very interesting listen. Alright, well, the next album was This Is Why by Paramore. We have discussed Paramore quite a few times on this channel before, so I doubt there's going to be any surprises here, really, but still, we're starting with you, Ben. What are your thoughts on This Is Why?
This is why I don't leave the house. This Is Why is also a very good album. Now, this album I have heard before, at least 3 times, maybe more, prior to this. So my thoughts on it are only well established, though I did find myself feeling more favorable to the... Oh, okay, so my traditional position on this album was I like the back half more. From You Force to Thick Skull, I like better than the first 5 tracks. I found myself this time feeling a lot more sympathetic. I mean, I didn't dislike the first 5 tracks, they were good. But I felt even more sympathetic to them than usual. I found all the first 4 tracks, well, all 5 of them, really, to be quite enjoyable. And that was being This Is Why, The News, Running Out of Time, Say Come Saw, and The Big Man, Little Dignity. Actually, I remember the first time I listened to that, liking that one the best of those 5. This time I think I liked it the least of those 5, but it's not bad by any means. I still really enjoyed the second half though, but it felt like they were on more equal footing. Perhaps I become more sympathetic to more modern sounding pop music. No, maybe those first few tracks are not really that much. I mean, they were a lot like After Laughter, honestly, and I am a big fan of After Laughter. Not as big as certain other people in this show, but I am a enjoyer of After Laughter, and it's some of its songs. So, insofar as I think that over time has made me a lot more sympathetic to the first half. The second half also still continued to be quite good, though. I still really like the song Crave in particular, and the song You Forced, but really is all very good. I would say this time, I think the song I liked the best was Running Out of Time. Altogether, which was not my previous opinion, but that was my vibe when I listened to this time around. But I think that there's a case for basically any track on this album being the best track. Or at least people could make that case. I don't think there was any obviously bad tracks or particularly weak tracks on here. And I do like the structure from going from more poppy, This Is Why being the most poppy song, to the gig Hold and more like from the, if we're thinking on a spectrum of new wave, almost to like post-punk or punk, or pop punk in their case. From on that spectrum, you start with the kind of the most new wave reflected, frankly, and also the most modern pop reflected at the beginning, and then get more and more. It's like you're traveling back in time and Blondie's music almost. Um, so then kind of this more punk rock inflected stuff in the back half, and I think that works very well. I really like that structural album. So altogether, a great album.
Matthew.
All right, so I have been well acquainted with This Is Why since it came out around February 2023. Um, this is like a really, really good album. It's my second favorite Paramore album, second only to After Laughter, which, we have done an episode about it when it faced off against Emotion by Carly Rae Jepsen, so I won't really go around bullet that. I remember when I first heard this album, and it kind of repeated when I re-listened to it, that like the first two tracks I wasn't not really a fan. I think they're still good songs, but it wasn't like, oh man, I love these songs. It wasn't really until like Running Out of Time where I kind of like eased into myself and like, oh, I actually really like this. Because I remember when I first listened to This Is Why when it came out, I was like, when it did the first two tracks, I'm like, do I like this song, this album? Because like, is this a possibility of this not being good? Because I wasn't really into them. I still think like they're probably around my least favorite tracks of the album, but they're still good songs. Wasn't until like Running Out of Time onward where I'm like, okay, I really like this stuff. Um, and like it shows like the growth of Paramore as a unit, especially during the songwriting, which is best personified in Crave, which is like probably my top three favorite Paramore songs. Like especially when you hit verse 2 where it says, I romanticize even the worst of times when it all took to make me cry was being alive, which is just like, wow. Um, especially when you know like the history of Paramore and like everything, all the drama they go through when they're still like here essentially, and especially like from the era that they came out of, which is the pop punk of the 2000s, where they're like basically the one band that of the big pop, quote unquote pop punk bands of the 2000s, like them, Fall Out Boy, uh, Panic at the Disco, I guess My Chemical Romance, where they're still making music and they're still making really good music. Um, Also, another track I really like was "Liar," which is my second favorite track of the album, which is talking about Haley Williams's sort of like coming to terms that she's in love with uh a person in the band, which is Taylor York, um, and that was like a really beautiful song. Also really love "Running Out of Time," which were my three favorite songs of the album. So altogether, really great stuff.
Van.
So this is another great album. This is a really really great matchup. Uh, First off, I'm gonna say I think This Is Why is the best Paramore song. I think this to me that's peak Paramore. Um, I think this album is kind of the perfect combination of the two sides of the career. You have kind of more of the pop element, and you also have kind of the punkish element, kind of more post-punk than punk, but still, this is them kind of marrying those two sounds together. Um, and you can definitely hear a lot of new wave influence. You can definitely tell they listen to the Talking Heads with kind of how jagged these songs sound. Um, they're very rough. The pretty harsh, and that's a good thing. I think this is probably about as out there as you can get as an established pop star in 2023, 2024, now 2025. This probably as out there as you can get while still being an established pop band, which I think is great. They're really pushing that line because nobody is doing kind of stuff this out there that's still contemporary pop. This album is very staggered musically. Whenever I hear it, I hear very staggered things. I don't know if anybody else is gonna really know what I mean, but it's kind of like there are lots of different things happening. Like here's this chord by the guitar, then it drops out, and then here's drums, and then here's bass, and it's kind of like it's very staggered sonically. It's not one continuous thing. It's very kind of jagged once again, but staggered, which I think is really cool sounds. Um, I think Taylor York is by far the MVP of this album, and possibly in Paramore, but certainly on this record. His chord choices, his note choices are excellent. Lots of cool kind of diminished chords, sharp, sharp five, sharp dimes, kind of weird out there kind of stuff. Awesome chord choices. Um, Zach Farrow also gives his best performance on this record too. Um, of his career, at least Paramore that I've heard is on this album. So tight, so creative. What this album came out about 6 years after the last one. You could tell that they've been working on it for like that long. You can hear just kind of all the small little intricacies that they're doing. Haley does a great job, I guess. I don't want to say she's the weakest link because I don't think there's a weak link on this album. She definitely has she still has her charisma, which is obviously like top tier. She's a little bit more restrained on this than some of the other albums. I feel like this is very much a music first record over, some of the first couple albums that are very much like Haley centric. Now that's kind of more all together. Especially, I think music first really is kind of the way I would think of this album. Maybe that's just because that's what my ear is drawn to, but I feel like they're really, really pushing the music sonically over just the voice and the lyrics like they would in the past. Also, I think the session bass player, Brian Robert Jones, he does a great job as well. I looked him up. Apparently, he's the touring rhythm guitar player, which is really weird, because, like, I don't know why you would hire a guy to play bass on your album, and then hire him to play rhythm guitar live, and then hire somebody else to play bass, as opposed to just hiring the guy who played bass on your album. I don't know. I mean, they found what they like. It works for them. I'm happy. I mean, whatever works best, but to me, it's just kind of weird. Oh, hey, here, you're going to do 10 songs on bass, and then live, we're going to have you play a different instrument. I just think it's kind of funny. One other thing, I think this album also reminds me of Remain in Light by the Talking Heads in the way that they kind of wind down. Like Remain in Light ends with the overload. It starts with Born Under Punches, Cross-Eyed and Painless, Great Curve, and then there's, of course, I forget the name of the big one. Oh god, I feel like such an idiot. Like, it's one of the most popular songs. Whatever. It'll come to me. Yeah, once in a lifetime. Yeah, once in a lifetime. Yeah, it's like I remember the first three of them, but starts with that, and then it kind of slowly unwinds throughout the second half, and the last two songs kind of go off that vibe of unwinding as opposed to building to a big finish. And I like whenever albums do that. That's cool. Although, I mean, this is, like I said, this is a great album. This is definitely really great music on this album. Like I said, they're pushing the limit of what it's like to be a pop band in 2023, and I think that's a great thing. I hope on the next album they keep pushing.
who knows, if they push hard enough, they might even give both.
Oh, I want to add something to what Fan said, which is true, very true. It does remind me of Remain in Light Your Life. Also, another very great album. We have done, of course, Stop Making Sense's album on here. That was also a very great album. Very great live album from a great movie. So, I would expect most viewers of the Chris Bartlow music review channel to be familiar with Talking Heads, but still shout out to them.
And actually, quick, you brought up Stop Making Sense. Paramore did Burning Down the House when they did A24 did the cover album of all the songs off that album, and Paramore did do Burning Down the House. And they're also the best song on that album by a long shot. So just another Paramore Talking Heads connection. They literally covered one of the songs.
Yes, well, and of course David Byrne did a cover why am I picking out on this now?
Was it Hard Times?
Yes, it was Hard Times. See, you blanked out on Once in a Lifetime, but that was embarrassing. I blanked out on Hard Times, and that's also embarrassing. Really embarrassing.
Yeah, I think I've heard that David Byrne covering Hard Times. I think I've seen it on YouTube.
What did you think?
Hard Times is actually my second favorite Paramore tune. That was my favorite until I heard this album.
Hard Times is my favorite, which is why it's embarrassing to try its name there for like 30 seconds. Anyway, what did you think about David Byrne covering that?
I don't know. I listened to it, I think, once, but it's been a while. At least a few months, I think, since I saw that, so... Sorry, I wasn't sure if you were asking me a fan.
It was kind of more aimed at fan, but anyone can answer. Matthew can answer.
I thought it was good. I don't think it was as good as Paramore covering Burning Down the House. But, I mean, he did a good job. I think it's inarguable that he did a good job, for sure.
Alright, well now time for my thoughts on the album. I remember I listened to this album back around the time it first came out, because Matthew wanted me to. And I did, and I remember at the time the only really song that stood out to me was Crave. It's track 9, best song of the album. I still agree with that. I did like a few of other songs more this time though around. Track 1, This Is Why. Track 3, Running Out of Time. And track 8, Laurel, I kind of liked those as well. But I still think Crave is the best one by far. I didn't really care for track 4, track 5. I thought they were a little, I don't know, flimsy, I guess. That's the French one, and then Big Band, Little Dignity. But still, I mean, I thought it was pretty good. Just overall, I mean, it was pretty solid. It's not as good as After Laughter, as Matthew said, but it does have a handful of good tracks. Crave, though, of course, I still think is the main kind of must-have one from the album, one that really, truly justifies it, and it makes it really a lot more valuable than it would be without it. So if I don't have as much to say about this one as some of the ones, I think that was pleasing enough. I like the song Crave, but it's just, I don't know, I just don't feel too passionately about this one compared to, like, probably everyone else here. Alright, now we're going on to which album we think is better. We're going to start with you, Ben. Which one of these albums did you like better?
This is a really hard one, and I know usually when I'm indecisive on here, it's mostly because I just think that they were both like decently good.
Ben, you're the most indecisive person I know.
Probably true, yes.
He can't decide if it's true or not. He's indecisive about that too.
I can't decide whether I am indecisive. No, actually, I'm not actually being indecisive here, though. My mind is actually made up. I'm just I'm just gonna be explaining my reasoning. So, I think that both albums this week were really good. Like, they were both very strong. I'm not just kind of like, I've been decided this entire time. There have been episodes of this album club where I've been not sure what I'm voting for until we got to this point, or in a few cases, not even at that point. This has been kind of embarrassing. Oh, it adds drama to it. It adds suspense. I know what I'm picking. But let me reason through it briefly. So, with the Jun Togawa album, I hope I didn't just butcher that.
Jun Togawa, I think.
Jun Togawa, yeah, that's a good. I think that was a really, really strong album with really strong instrumentals, but if this is with a battle becomes like a difficult category, and my lack of understanding of the lyrics, even though I could treat them as melodic, and well, singing is very melodic, as Fan pointed out, my lack of understanding of the lyrics did present some level of obstacle to me. Not for me enjoying it, but for me appreciating it in its totality. Alright. Did I really enjoy listening to it anyway? Yes, it's a great album. Well, I'll go back to it almost suddenly. It's a great album. In that sense, there was some obstacle. Like, I hadn't picked up the bug things. I knew that the album was titled The Bug, but I hadn't picked up the bug inflection idea. It's a fan reference it. So in some sense, that is a good argument for the album being the better of the two albums. It's just that those layers of it that I don't even know. I think that that's a completely reasonable argument for someone to make. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody does make it. That being said, I am going to stick with what I think I understand as a totality battle, which is This Is Why. I really didn't discuss it in that much substantive depth earlier in this episode, which I think was kind of regrettable. But it is an album that's totally about the COVID pandemic, about all the chaos that was in the news at that time. This is the news. That it deals with the news, and then This Is Why is like, this is why I don't leave the house, even though they say it's, or what you say it's safe. There was like a postal element to it. It's not just Joel COVID, but in a way that maybe I haven't fully grappled with. But it's an album dealing with all these frustrations of the first Trump presidency, and two, especially COVID, and then three, coming out of COVID and being like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to leave the house. The news is, I'm having to turn off the news. That's a good message for all of you. Everyone listening to this, turn off the news. And then Crave. Thinking about the lyrics of Crave. We've talked about Crave some, but I want to go back to certain lyrics that I know Matthew in particular is fond of, and read them off as like the case for this album and its progression. Right? I talked about moving from, kind of poppy to horror stuff. But in some sense, the lyrical themes of this album move in the opposite direction. Crave obviously deals with coming out of depression, right, and then craving life. And I think that these lyrics, and I know that these are Matthew's favorite lyrics, so I'm going to read them out, I think represent the best of this album. Even if this isn't actually my favorite song on the album, I think this represents the best of it. I romanticize even the worst of times when all it took to make me cry was being alive. Look up and see a reflection of someone who never gave way to the pain. And then the rest of it is like, I looked up and saw this person that could crave life. And this is really strong. Is a really strong, I think, ultimately the sentiment of this album. Christopher mentioned the French. The French as an aspect, but let's translate that French, right? Which is, it is okay. It is all right. It's like me. Comme ça, comme ci, comme ça. I'm doing me. That's what that means. So, like, in the first half, even if we have this kind of power pop, this kind of energetic power pop, the lyrical theme is about depression. And in that sense, it's like After Laughter as an album. But then in the second half, as it gets harder, right, we do have, and I think Crave is the best representative of this idea of, like, moving past that, or at least grappling with it in a way that allows you to move forward. Which is also a theme on After Laughter, but I think what stands out here, I'm able to get all of this out of this album in a way that I was not able to get out of a Jun Togawa album. Which is not a dig of an excellent Jun Togawa album. To some extent, it's my own cultural and linguistic limitations. But altogether, I am voting for This Is By.
Okay. Matthew.
This is one of the best matchups we've ever done. I think it's the best matchup we have done since we did Illmatic versus Stop Making Sense. I have to go with This Is Why. That Crave alone, basically, like altogether, like a really good album. And the other album that we did was also really good, but that lyric of Crave just crushes me every time. So I have to pick This Is Why.
Fan.
So this is a really tough one. This is not a gimme by any means. You know, it's kind of like it isn't like one on the first line. You know, where it's like, oh, it's not easy. Oh, it's one that I just like better because they're both extremely good. So you kind of have to go down the list of tiebreakers. And it is very difficult. But I think, because I don't know how Chris is going to vote, but I feel like This Is Why is already a really, beloved record and very known. I feel like I'm going to have to vote for Tamahime Sama because I feel like this is too strong of an album to not have at least one of us represent it. Because this is a really, really good album. And having it be a 4-0 shutout against it, once again, I don't know how Chris is going to vote, obviously. But if that were the case, I think that would be doing a severe injustice to this record, because this is great stuff. And so I think for me, it's going to put it over the edge, where I think that this record deserves some representation from at least one of us. So I'm going to vote for Tamahime Sama.
Right, and that brings us to me. Well, I'm a bit on the spot here. It was basically my thoughts. This is why the first time I listened to it, I wasn't super impressed with it, but I was very impressed with one song. Second listen, I did like it quite a bit more. There were more songs I did like. It's a very solid album. And that one song, Crave, is by far the best song on either of these two albums. Tamahime Sama, on the other hand, is very interesting. It's very weird. I can't quite understand all of it as I don't speak Japanese, and how it flows and everything. So it's a little hard to exactly formulate a complete opinion. There's a depth there that I can't completely understand. Of course, maybe if I do speak Japanese, maybe I couldn't completely understand it, especially since it's apparently talks about womanhood, administration, and stuff, and I'm obviously a man. But it is only a very interesting little album. So both of them, I think, do have strong points. As for they'll place on the album club, they'll place in a matchup against each other. To me, there's always there's always kind of a metatextual element. It's, well, what context am I pitting these against each other? I'm not doing it necessarily in a vacuum. I'm doing it here on the album club in this sort of format where we do the two randomly picked albums. I had heard This Is Why before. It was very much a known element, even if my opinion on it did change some. Tamahime Sama, big unknown. Really, any foreign language music for me is a big unknown. I can't really say I anticipate liking or disliking any foreign language music, particularly. So it's the first one we've really done on here of its foreign language, and I quite liked it more than I expected. I quite liked it just in general. Not just more than I expected, but just in general, I really did like this album. So, considering the context in which I'm listening to it, my expectations going into this, my understanding or lack thereof going out of this, and also trying to look at the albums as a whole and not just look at Crave as just a single song, I think I am going to have to vote for, now I'm going to forget how to pronounce it, Tamahime Sama, Jun Togawa album. I really did come out, I think, quite impressed with this one, especially since it's what I think the first foreign language album I've listened to all the way through. Certainly the first Japanese album I've listened to all the way through. And it just had really gave me a kind of an interesting perspective on sort of non-English music just as a whole. It's just completely different from what I normally listen to, really, in that regard. And also in terms of its style, how it has Japanese folk, of course, incorporated into it. Obviously, I do listen to New Wave, and we've done that here before. But Japanese folk, that's not something we've ever done anything really even really remotely similar to, and it's not something I've really ever listened to anything remotely similar to, other than maybe some video game OSTs. So it was really nice, though, to hear this. So, yeah, I mean, that's it. We are tied. Matthew and Ben have voted for This Is Why. Me and Van have voted for Tamahime Sama. So, interesting. This is our second episode in a row that we've tied. Yes, Ben?
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like this is an example of a tie that the tie is the right outcome. We all
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I was thinking this is definitely a tie is the correct outcome, I think.
It's fair.
Like, we saw this with Elmatic and Stop Making Sense, too. That was in the book. So it's like, okay, this should be a tie. I'm glad it's a tie.
And I'll say, just for the record, obviously I was the last person to vote. I was the one who decided whether it was 3-1 or a tie. I tried not to vote, though. I had already been thinking about this entire episode, what I was going to vote for, and had already come to this conclusion. I just did... what may have sounded like I was thinking, I just had to try to, articulate it properly, and it just took some time. But I had made up my mind, as we were discussing the albums. I had already, I think, had a good idea, even just last evening, though, what I was going to break for. But it just... I think I didn't vote to make it a tie. I did vote because that was what I had, my reasoning I'd worked out before I knew how Fan was voting, how Matthew was voting, how Ben was voting. I had a good guess as to who Matthew was voting for, but I didn't know for sure about Ben or Fan. So I tried to, I was listening to who you all were voting for, but I didn't let that influence me.
I will confess that in the Elmatic versus Stop Making Sense episode, I voted for the Elmatic because I thought it would create a tie in that case. I mean, I probably would have voted for it anyway, but it was really difficult for me. This case, of course, as I explained, my own reasoning here. In Vilmatic versus Stop Making Sense case, well, it's not that I voted to only just to make it a tie, but that definitely weighed in my decision. And it kind of sounded like that was weighing on fans' decision today. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, it was weighing a bit. I was thinking last night that, because I was thinking it's tough because I was like, I was thinking if Ben and Matthew both vote, this is why. It's probably, I would more than likely vote for Tamahime Sama because it just, like I said, it deserves recognition. But it was definitely something that I was even debating throughout. Like, before I even said my answer, I was like, I don't know if it's the right choice, but I think it edges it out just barely, and certainly in its uniqueness too is a really big factor for me. Is how unique it is, and strangeness I think is certainly an element that I like to incorporate in when I'm listening to music, because I enjoy music that's very unique. I enjoy music that's very one singular thing. So that also kind of helped push me in this direction. Although Paramore certainly is doing their own thing, but this is definitely a bit more, at least from what I've heard, is a bit more singular.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, that's certainly a good point, Sam. So it's not the best transition for me to follow up on here, but still, we're all going on to who picked what album. I think to probably most people listening, it should be pretty obvious as to who picked what, especially with Tamahime Sama. But we're gonna just say, anyone have any guesses as to who picked what?
I'm guessing Matthew picked This Is Why, and I'm guessing that fan picked the Tamahime Sama. Is that why? Tamahime Sama. Yes, that is. I know Sama. I know Sama. It is a Japanese word, I know. Tamahime Sama.
I would say fan pick Tamahime Sama.
Yeah, well, that's all right, basically. Ben's correct, Matthew's correct. Fan, of course, picked Tamahime Sama. I think maybe I should have remembered this. I thought maybe I'd heard of it before. I think I maybe heard of it in passing from somewhere. Because, like, its album cover did look familiar to me. I just can't put my finger on where. But I didn't pick it. This is why that was picked by Matthew, although I think Ben could have just as easily probably picked it. But just in this case, it was Matthew. So, yeah, and that's also, as we said earlier, the second Paramore album we've covered on the album club. The previous one was episode, try to think, is that like 6 or something? It was one of our very early episodes. It was, Santiago was on break that week, but we did cover it, and that was a good episode too, I thought. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed hearing us kind of talk about just all sorts of things, really, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next video.